this is the first time on seeing my video, you are welcome. Please follow me on Facebook, Elopet Studio 7 or Studio 7 blog, Instagram, Elopet Studio 7. Our YouTube channel is Elopet Studio 7. Subscribe, like, comment, and share for more updates. Thank you.
This is the point in the show that I introduce our guest analysts who are here to give their perspectives on nearly everything we've covered in the program and beyond. And today I'm joined here in the studio by the public affairs commentator, Arise News analyst, and head of mass communication at Bayes University in Abuja, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi. And also with me is Toby Shoniyi, who's Arise judiciary editor. Both of you, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Indeed. And I want to kick off with this news that broke a few hours ago. Nigeria's appeal court dropping all charges against the separatist leader NNAMDI KANU after ruling that he had been illegally arrested abroad. The court also ruled that his extradition had been illegal. What's your assessment of that?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. I think it's a good day for Nigeria. It's a good day for rule of law. If you read the judgment, the appeal court is very clear that if you want to prosecute someone, you must follow the law. Because the essence of prosecution is to establish the law, follow the law. But bringing somebody illegally, the federal government disobey Nigerian local laws, disobey international law. We have treaty with Kenya, we have with Great Britain. If they want to try NNAMDI KANU, there are legal process they should have followed to bring him in. You don't just go and kidnap him. So, and in law, we say that you cannot put something on nothing. Since the process through which he was brought into Nigeria was flawed, there is no way the trial could have continued in the first instance. So, I think the court deserves to be commended. We've always called for rule of law, and today, the appeal court has upheld rule of law, and they send clear signal to the government that they will not allow such illegality.
I'm going to come back to that matter in a minute, but let me bring you in Professor Adeniyi, because of course he was the leader of the banned Indigenous People of Biafra IPOB group. IPOB has been campaigning for the creation of an independent state in southeastern Nigeria. What happens to all of that now?
Well, I think the judgment today is going to be very, very instructive. It should be strong enough to diffuse the tension around the agitations of IPOB and the reason why, around the banned IPOB that is, and the reason why they're actually agitating. But I've always argued severally that the kind of question is more of a social question, more of a societal question that has to do with an element of nation building, something that has to be resolved of the courts, and not necessarily a legal matter, Yes, I understand the legal angle. It's sometimes okay for the state to resort to a prosecution like this when an individual appears to be threatening, the foundation of a state. But of course, one would have expected government to look beyond the legalese, the legal aspect of it, the strict legal mechanism, black letter law, and delve into the soul of the crisis.
It's a political issue to a large extent.
It's more of a political issue, a social issue, rather than a legal one, which is why today's judgment is a welcome development. And I want to believe that, all elements within the system will cash in on it, build on it, towards peace, as the case could be.
That's a very good point. Yeah. And Mr. Shoniyi, the appeal court also ruled that the Federal High Court did not have the jurisdiction to try Mr. KANU. Do you think that this case is going to proceed further than the appeal court? I mean, could we see it in the Supreme Court?
Yeah, if government wants to be mischievous, they will go to Supreme Court. But if they want to obey the rule of law, I think they should free him. They should heal the warning of the judges. It's it's quite interesting. They just come short of calling out the Attorney General of the Federation. That as the first chief law officer of the nation, he is in a better position to advise the government that you don't do that. You don't just go and, we are not in a banana republic. That is the message. And If they are still going to go to Supreme Court and believing that what they did is wrong, that would be a shame, really.
But
So-
will they still hold him if they go to the Supreme? I mean,
Yeah, well-
given today's judgment, is he likely to be freed and then, you know, be sort of asked to return to court, or will he still be held if they appeal against this?
Well, from my experience as correspondent who have seen the court for long, I know the tactics employed by law enforcement agency. They want to hold him while they are appealing, even though there is no order of court that said they should. Because ordinarily, like we see in the case of ASU and the federal government, they will need to apply for stay of execution of that judgment while they are on appeal. And even once that has not been granted, they ought to free him, but they will go to court and say, look, if we free him, he might still be a danger to society,
Right.
and therefore they are not likely to free him. But like Prof said, I think it's a political issue, and I think this judgment provides both the agitator and the government an opportunity to politically resolve this matter. I mean, government, I would advise, should take advantage of this judgment and should not push its luck further.
Yeah, that's a good point. But Professor Adeniyi, I mean, in spite of the fact, that very cogent point that you made, that this is a political issue and that there are lots of social questions around it. I mean, the idea of Biafra has never actually gone away, has it? And despite the arrests of its members, the arrest of, you know, that movement has actually been growing. Is that why you think it's a social issue? Because the government might see it differently and say that that's precisely why it's seen as a threat.
Yeah, I think government sometimes act like every other state will act, you know, trying to be very mechanical, apply supposedly the law, you know, in dealing with some crisis. But oftentimes there's an undertone, there's an undercurrent, subterranean issues that trigger crisis. Those subterranean issues are rather addressed rather than, you know, the outward manifestation of the issues. You know, when you see agitations like this, they're just outward manifestation of subsisting underground issues, you know, which has to do with our nation as a country. We're still evolving as a nation. We're not yet a bounded nation, as the case could be. But what are those things that are disturbing the national ethnic groups? Those are the things. It's a question of integration, a question of involvement, and a feeling of marginalization, whether loudly or quietly. These things are still there. And of course, we have also made the point severally that Nigeria is not the only heterogeneous society. But the problem we have always had is the management of our difference. You know, we have had leaders, you know, who have been inadequate in bringing about harmony, you know, binding us emotionally. You know, togetherness is not just about physical binding, you know, not just about capital city, not about flag, you know, not about the temporary association with Nigerianness through football and all such things. It goes beyond that to this, and involve sentiment, you know, giving people a sense of association through pronouncement, through action, through representation in governance and the government process. You know, when these things are missing, then of course you will see agitation. But rather than dealing with agitation using strong arm tactics, it's always better to adopt soft power, which comes through engagement, consultation, you know, making compromises and promises, as the case could be. Otherwise, you know, you still see crisis here and there. And of course, I will agree with the attorney at law that we now have an opportunity for a new beginning through the instrumentality of this judgment, you know, to chart a new political course, you know, bring about some situation, because we have all lost. We have all been losing in the last couple of months since this trial started, because the first day extension, and of course there's a continuing crisis in the southeast, you know, which is affecting the economy of that zone. And if the economy of that zone is being affected, of course, it has a way of rubbing up on the Nigerian state as a whole, which we do not need, especially in the build-up to the next election, and against the background of our dwindling economy that needs all sectors to be on board, whether oil sector, trade, commerce, etc., etc.
That's another very good point. And Mr. Shoni, we've got about a minute or so before we have to go. But the group that he leads, IPOB, is still a banned group. What are the legal implications of that if he continues to be seen as the leader of the group?
Well, in law, really, that group no longer exists. But I'm aware of cases challenging the ban, the proscription of IPOB. So it's still pending in courts. They might say when government might say, court may still hold that, look, the organization was illegally proscribed. So until then, in the eyes of the law, that group does no longer exist.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait to see what happens next.
Absolutely.
Okay. Toby Shoni, Arise Judiciary Editor, and of course Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, Arise News Analyst, Head of Mass Communication at Bayes University in Abuja, and Public Affairs Commentator. Thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition.